All right, well, we have a rainy night and I'm pretty much stuck inside the garage. And what better opportunity to find out what actually happened to the Firebird? I lost oil pressure on the last hour of my drive home from Power Tour, and pretty sure I cooked some engine bearings.
Yeah, that you're losing more. You're down to like 10 there.
First thing I'm going to find out is, does it have oil in it? I added 1 quart at a gas station, and it says that the oil's over full on the dipstick. I hope the dipstick's accurate, but I did not add any oil to it during the entire trip, and it only had about 200 miles on it before I left. So, I don't know. It ran perfect until I hit it that one last time, and I ran it really hard. So, we're going to dig into it and find out exactly what happened and how much damage there is, so I can hopefully get this thing back on the road. And while we're at it, we're going to change this torque converter and make it a little faster. Okay, step one, lift the car up and find out if it has oil in it and how much is actually in there. All right, well, here's the moment of truth. There better be more oil in the pan than fits in this jug. Otherwise, I quite possibly ran the engine oil low, and it's my fault that I may have spun some rod bearings. So, well, either way, it's probably my fault. My goal is to try and get and save the oil so I can look at it and I can measure exactly how much is left in the oil pan. Because like I said, I checked it while I was on Power Tour and I really didn't seem to have lost any. And all right, let's strain it out and see what we got. See if I do this without spilling it too. Okay, the oil is draining slow. It is cold. I haven't had the engine running today. So, all right, well, I got almost 5 quarts out. It's considered a 6-quart oil pan. I don't know. There should have been enough oil in this engine that it did not lose oil pressure completely. Okay, this might actually begin to overflow here. All right, I got a second container. With the first one a little overfilled, so I got more than 5 quarts out. Yeah, it's just a drizzle. I'm going to confidently say that when I lost oil pressure, there was at least 4 quarts of oil in the engine, in the oil pan, plus whatever's in the filter. Well, either way, I can bring in here a little bit. This drain plug has minimal, there's some debris there, but no chunks. So I was able to drive this car home. I'm really hoping I take it apart and I find something broken in the oil pump in the pressure relief spring, because that would make sense for exactly what happened. Well, there was no surprises on the drain plug, so I'm going to pop the filter off here and take a look at what my oil filter looks like. All right, well, I went ahead and I pulled the filter off, and this is dark oil, but that's because I use Royal Purple and it comes out pretty dark. But I don't really even see glitter in it. I'm not finding anything wrong with it at all. So that's really good news. However, there's definitely when I would rev it up a little bit, I want to say 3,000 RPM, 3,500 RPM range, it sounded like I heard a rod knock. I've drained the oil out of it. It was a little low, but I still have absolutely no idea what went wrong or where my problem lies. So with that, I'm going to probably get the torque converter disconnected, the bell housing bolts pulled, and the exhaust pulled off so I can let it down. And we are going to get a cherry picker on this engine, remove it, figure out what went wrong, and get it put back together so we can have some fun with it again. All right, with that, all of the pins are pulled out of the hood, and the hood's ready to pull off. However, it's still kind of rainy and wet outside, and I don't have enough room in my garage to take the hood off and set it anywhere, so I'm going to put it outside tomorrow morning, and we're going to get the engine pulled out and get this thing figured out. All right, let's slide forward, and yay, half the car's taken apart. Well, here we are, the hood's off, sitting on a barrel. Next step is get the coolant out of it and pull all the bell housing bolts that I left in, and we'll have it yanked out in no time. We've got the hoses pulled off and all of the coolant drained, fuel system's disconnected, engine's really close to getting pulled out. All right, with that, I've got all the accessories off, the exhaust, everything's disconnected except for I got to pull the 2 bolts out of the motor mount, and we're going to pull this up and out of there, so I'm going to get it lifted out. All the bolts are out. We're clearing the motor mounts in a second here. Actually, I think we are. Just like that. Well, there it is, up and out of the hole. Next step, get the engine stand bolted onto the back of it. We're going to flip this thing over, get the oil pan off, timing cover, find out what went wrong. Hopefully, not very much. We'll be able to put it back in the car and be driving this one again real soon. Like I said, it made it to 60 miles home. It just was missing some oil pressure, and I want to go through and figure out where it went and what happened to it. So we're going to get the harmonic balancer pulled off here so I can get the timing cover off and take a look inside this motor. Just like that. My balancer is pulled. All right, well, it's the first look inside the motor besides draining the oil. And pulling the timing cover off here. A little bit of residue there, but I don't see anything. Make sure my oil pump bolts are tight, and they are. And my oil pump cover bolts are tight, and they are. We'll get the oil pan off of it and look inside there. We're gonna see what we find here. And there's some metal in there. I think my theory of losing a rod bearing is definitely correct. We got major glitter in the bottom of this pan. I still don't see a reason as to why it happened yet. Okay, well, first thought is that the O-ring on the pickup tube sucked in. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull the pickup tube and inspect that O-ring, and I think looks fine. Here's the pump. Yeah, the O-ring looks fine on there. I don't see any issue with that at all. Without even taking it apart, this is number 1 rod, and I can see that that's where my oil pressure is. We've got some chucked bearings for sure. Not what I was hoping to see. Yeah, the only thing left to do is probably flip it over and pull the bearing caps off. All right, so I went ahead and I flipped the engine upside down and pulled the windage tray off. The number 1 rod seems to be a little loose. The rest of them all feel fine. None of the main bearings look like they were smoked. I think I wrecked 1 rod bearing. Whether or not I damaged the camshaft or the crankshaft or not, I don't know. But I would say the junk in the bottom of the pan came from here. So I'm going to pull a couple of these caps off and just take a look at what's going on with the journal on the crank. So I'm going to pull off connecting rod 2, and bearing's a little hit, and you can see a little trash went through it, but it actually doesn't look too bad. And number 1 has spun. Son of a gun. All right. Well, here's what we got. All right, so as we can see, number 1, the tabs are knocked off, and the bearing is stuck to the crank. Actually, it's not stuck to the crank, but it was spinning inside the connecting rod on the back side of the bearing. You can see rotational marks in it. So I'm going to, oh, I got it apart. It's not welded too much. There is a little bit of a dimple on that connecting rod journal. Not good, guys. This is not what I was hoping to find. So what happened? The way the oiling system works in an LS is you have a pickup tube that sucks oil from the pan, pulls it up to the pump, pushes oil into this hole, which then is cross-drilled here and bored through the block all the way to the rear, which comes into your oil filter. Through your filter, back into your motor, feeding the engine from the back all the way to the front. So the last bearing to get oil is number 1 right here. And it is toast. So with it spinning inside there and enough of a mark on the crankshaft, she's pretty damaged. All right, so I've dissected the oil pump, and I found this on the pressure relief valve. There's a spot right there. As I rotate it, you can kind of see a spot. It's a little different color, and it's a little rough to the touch here. I think it's possible that when I was revving it really high, I may have sucked the pan dry because it was a quart low. But feeling this in the bore, kind of feels like there's a sticky spot to it a little bit. And possibly what happened was we sucked an air pocket into the pump. It got oil back, popped this valve off because it quick shot the pressure, went from low to high, pushed this pressure relief, and it got stuck. I don't like the way it looks. I'll clean it off here. Right here, I wiped it off so you can kind of see it better. There's some spots that are shiny, and there's some darker spots. There's a spot right there. It makes me think that little edge right on it right there may have been enough to cause it to stick inside the bore of the pump. Otherwise, I really don't know what went wrong. The pump itself, there's no broken components. Like I said, I was able to drive it home after I lost that oil pressure for that minute. Did add a quart. So, I mean, I might have been a quart and a half low. That shouldn't have been enough for the engine to lose oil pressure for a long enough period of time that I toasted a bearing. But I definitely heard it run like I lost all the oil pressure because I could feel the engine kind of cut out, like I lost lifter pressure. And so it felt like the engine just lost power. That's what made me look down at the gauge and see it said 0. So it was definitely over 6,000 RPM with no oil pressure for, the length of an off-ramp, depending on where it actually lost pressure. But I was pushing it as hard as I could because I figured it was going to be my last hard run before I made it to the slower highway speeds and got off the interstate. But that one little push was all it took, and I did do some damage. I might get a micrometer on there and see I might do something really stupid and throw a bearing in it and put it back together and just run it till it blows up. As it stands right now, my crankshaft's damaged. My connecting rod is damaged. Yeah. Yep. Shucks. Okay, so here's what I found. I've mic'd the journals, and there's probably 10 thousandths material missing from the crank journal. It's only missing on basically the top and the bottom. So when it's at top dead center and bottom dead center, that feels when it's going to have the most wear, which would be obvious. That's when the piston's doing the most work. I think, and I haven't fully decided yet, but for the cost of a set of rod bearings, I may just throw this back together with new bearings in it and send it. This is definitely not something I would ever do for a customer or anybody who expected their engine to last very long. All right, so I've been looking at this for a little while. I've done some measuring. I believe that a set of rod bearings is going to be way cheaper than even buying another set of head gaskets. So what I think I'm going to do, because basically this engine, I mean, when you see this, this is no good. To fix this correctly, it's a complete overhaul. The crankshaft should be removed, reground, new bearings installed, probably pull the whole engine apart, wash it, which means you're replacing gaskets and everything else. I don't want to do that. I think for right now, with what I have planned with this car, this thing ran and made it back with the bearing destroyed and half spun. I believe what I'm going to do is order a set of crank bearings, put the engine back together, and, well, I'm going to beat on it. I know I'm going to beat on it because I'm going to put the new torque converter in it too so it spins harder. But I feel like for right now, with the garage being built and everything I have going on, having this car be mobile and being able to drive it is more important than having it be completely perfect. So I think I'm going to order a new set of bearings and get this engine put back together. That way, at least the car starts up and drives and I can move it around, and I know where my problem is.